It was late at night, and I sat at my desk, the warm glow of a lamp illuminating the old, worn notebook on the table. My name is Emily Carter, a 27-year-old woman from a small town in Kansas, now living in Chicago. I had always been an ordinary person, working as a technician for a tech company. My life revolved around endless projects and the occasional moments of solitude in my small downtown apartment. But a single accident changed everything. This is the first time I've decided to share my story, not because I seek attention or validation, but because I feel a responsibility to speak up. If you're listening, I ask you to hear me with both your heart and mind. Have you ever felt that everything you believed in was just an illusion? I felt that way the moment the accident happened and I died. But death, as I learned, was only the beginning. It all started on what seemed to be a normal Friday. Exhausted after a week of work, I left the office earlier than usual. A gentle rain fell, the droplets streaking across my car's windshield as I drove down the familiar highway toward home. My favorite song played in the background, a small comfort after the chaos of the week. Suddenly, a blinding light flashed in front of me. A large truck swerved into my lane, careening out of control across the divider. The sound of screeching tires and blaring horns filled the air. Instinctively, I turned the wheel, but everything happened too fast. The deafening crash of metal against metal shattered the night. My body jolted violently against the seatbelt, and pain surged through me, brief but unforgettable. Then, silence. I felt weightless, as though I were being pulled out of my body. The world around me faded into darkness. When I awoke, I was no longer in the world I knew. There were no streets, no honking cars, none of the familiar noises of life. Instead, I floated in a vast, infinite void. A radiant light surrounded me, warm and gentle, wrapping around me like a mother's embrace. This light wasn't like any light I'd ever seen. It felt alive, vibrant, and all-encompassing. I no longer had a body, yet I existed. At that moment, I felt a peace deeper than anything I'd ever known. But the peace didn't last long. The light began to shift, coalescing into a figure. It wasn't just a presence. It was him. It was God. God stood before me, surrounded by an indescribable aura of power and love. His gaze held an infinite understanding, piercing through me, seeing every fear, every hope, every flaw I had ever tried to hide. When he spoke, his voice resonated through the void, both thunderous and tender, touching every corner of my soul. My child, your time has not yet come, but you have been chosen to see what lies ahead so that you may be the bearer of truth and hope. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. I knelt, not out of fear, but in reverence. Lord, I whispered, I am unworthy, but show me what I must see. He extended his hand toward me, and instantly I was enveloped by a stream of vivid, shifting visions. I didn't just see them, I felt them. The pain, the joy, the truth. It was all overwhelming. I saw a modern world where technology and humanity had become inseparable. Towering skyscrapers gleamed with light, and streets bustled with people whose eyes seemed lifeless, consumed by their devices. At the center of it all stood a man. He appeared on grand stages, his face illuminated by the bright lights of adoration. Crowds cheered and cried as if he were their savior. He wasn't a politician or a celebrity. He was more than that. He was the embodiment of hope for the masses, promising to end poverty, cure disease, and restore the planet. His words held a power that captivated millions. But beneath his polished image, I saw shadows gathering, an encroaching darkness that threatened to swallow everything good. For such men are false apostles, deceitful workmen, disguising themselves as apostles of Christ. 2 Corinthians 11:13. Remember, God's voice echoed, darkness often disguises itself as light, but those who remain steadfast in faith will not be deceived. Carry this message and remind them that only my light is true. As the visions continued, I saw people embracing new technologies, implants and devices that promised convenience and connection. These tools allowed them to unlock doors with a blink, pay for goods with a wave of their hand, and communicate through thought alone. But the cost was immense. Those who resisted were cast out of society, unable to work, buy food, or survive in a world that had become entirely dependent on these systems. I saw a family at a grocery store. A father tried to pay with cash, but the cashier shook her head coldly. The man crouched to console his crying daughter, whispering, "It'll be okay, sweetheart," though his eyes betrayed his despair. They walked away empty-handed, becoming ghosts in a society that had no place for them. Around them, others watched silently, some with pity, others with fear, knowing they could be next. I saw small groups of believers huddled in the shadows, praying softly by the flickering light of candles. Their faces were weary, but their eyes held a steadfast hope. "The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want," they recited, their voices steady despite the darkness. These words, drawn from Psalm 23:1, seemed to anchor them, giving strength where despair threatened to take hold. One man, his hands calloused, spoke of scavenging for food in abandoned places, while a young woman clung to a bag of seeds, vowing to grow what they needed to survive. Their prayers weren't just words. They were declarations of defiance against the darkness that sought to engulf them. "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear?" they recited. Their faith burned brighter than the candles they held, a beacon against the oppressive shadows. And then the light returned, pulling me back from the visions. "Therefore, stay awake, for you do not know on what day your Lord is coming." Matthew 24:42. I awoke in a hospital bed, my breath ragged, my body trembling. The doctors told me I had flatlined for several minutes, calling my survival a miracle. But the true miracle, I realized, was what I had seen. My soul felt both heavy and uplifted, burdened by the responsibility to share this truth, but also filled with an unshakable faith. Tears streamed down my face, not from fear, but from humility and awe. I knew, from that moment on, my life would never be the same. If you're hearing this, consider it a wake-up call. Awake, O sleeper, and arise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. Ephesians 5:14. The world is changing faster than we realize, and not all that glitters is gold. We must remain vigilant, rooted in faith, and mindful of the choices we make. Because sometimes the brightest lights hide the deepest darkness. Are you ready to see the true light?